Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Being a Craftsman DIY. In this episode, we are going to be making a farmhouse wooden quilt sign. Farmhouse is all the rage right now, and to be honest with you, my wife loves farmhouse stuff. I've made a couple things for her. I even made this farmhouse sign for Christmas, but she also wants some more. And I love my wife, and I love to make her happy. So we're going to be making another quilt sign, and you're going to be able to follow along with me step by step on how to do this project. So for this project, you're going to need the following items. And some of these tools will also help you to accomplish this project. This project will be a skill level 3. So let's get started. So when I begin a project like this, I like to design it completely before I start building. Some people use programs and some people do it by memory, but I kind of like a little bit of the mixture of doing it by memory but also doing a plan. That way I could see how this thing's going to look when it's done. And for this project especially, you want to make sure the pattern works. Now I'm going to put a link in the description to a site that has a vast variety of different patterns you can do. But for this project, I have a pattern that my wife's picked out that she really wants me to make, and so we're going to make that pattern. So there's two different ways that you can transfer this pattern to the wood. The way that I'm going to do is that I've printed off a copy of the pattern from a picture my wife found online, and I'm going to free-handedly try to trace it pretty much exactly what this is. But a really cool thing that you can do is take this to a printing place, something like an office supply store, and tell them you want to have this enlarged to 11 by 11. And they can do that, and then you can literally just trace it right to the board itself. And that'll save you a lot more time and a lot more effort. So take a piece of paper and tape it to your workspace. That way it doesn't move around on you. And you're going to want to use a carpenter square that will at least give you the option to get up to 12 inches on both sides. So we're going to make actually an 11¼ inch square. So go ahead and make a square 11 inches by 11 inches and 1/4. This next step, you can choose to do this if you want to, but the frame is going to be 3/4 inch board. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a line beyond what we're doing right now, just to give me the proper look of what this is actually going to end up looking like. Alright, so that is our frame. The design is going to fit on the inside. So the next thing to do is to look at the image and try to trace it the best you can. The one thing that you may notice is that I did not draw the entire piece, because the thing about patterns is that if you look at this and split it up in 4s, each segment is identical. So we may just make 4 of the same pieces, we make 16 of these little blocks, we make 4 of these, and then we just lay it out. So by only doing it like this, I know what measurements to take and make so that I can make each piece. But I just make them according to how many I need of each. So I don't need to draw the whole thing out to do it. Once I've got everything marked, I just went ahead and cut them. And then on the table saw, cutting these 1-inch strips that are the length that I need them to be. So these pieces ended up 1 by 7, and they were pretty much identical to what I needed. For the nice little arrow pieces, I ended up taping them together because what I could do is cut the same cut multiple times by just cutting it one time, and each piece would be identical to the other. Now, unfortunately, I didn't have 4 pieces ready to cut, so I had to cut 3 and then trace it onto the last board to finish the final cut. And for all of this, you can cut these things using a jigsaw, but if you wanted to cut these little 1-inch squares, you can set up a jig like this by cutting 1-inch strips again, and then with a sled on your table saw, you can set a little stopping block and clamp that down. And then all you've got to do is run your saw by holding this and just cutting them as you see what I'm doing in this, just cutting them to develop these 1-inch square blocks. You can also do the same technique with the jigsaw and just marking them in a vise and then cutting them off, but you're going to have a little more sanding because your jigsaw won't be as clean of a cut. And now you just want to sand everything nice and smooth, get rid of any rough edges and some of the markings left from the saws. Okay, so before we go any further, I just want to make sure and reassure you that this might seem like a lot of cutting, a lot of different things, and that I'm doing so many different things to accomplish these cuts, when in reality it is super simple. You can do all these cuts using a jigsaw. It just all depends on the pattern you chose. Obviously, I chose a really more in-depth pattern with a lot of different pieces, but if you choose a pattern that's like this pattern, you really have one cut for the center, and then I had one cut to make all of these because these were all laid on top of each other in they were stacked 4 high. So I could cut them one time and I would cut them all exactly the same. So just keep in mind, it all depends on what pattern you choose. But the next step we want to do is go ahead and paint all the pieces that we have, whatever color you want to do. I'm going to paint mine black, and then we're going to cut the back piece of this, which is going to be basically 12 by 12, lay it out on my saw, cut it, and then paint that white, and then let these all dry. Okay, now while that is all drying, we're going to go ahead and make the trim pieces that are going to go around this quilt square. Now that everything is done with the staining and with the painting and everything's dry, it's time to assemble this thing. Now to assemble this thing, it's okay to use wood glue. Now I know some of you might be saying, absolutely do not use wood glue because you've got paint involved. Well, here's the thing. Typically, you do not want to use wood glue when you're applying things to paint because the wood glue is only going to be as strong as how much the paint is sticking to that product. So if you're using a paint that easily peels and you put wood glue on that, it's going to still come off just as easy as that paint peels. So be mindful of what kind of paint you're using, but this is not going to have any stress on it. It's only going to be hanging on a wall, so you don't have to worry about these glue joints breaking. Even on the perimeter, the only way for this to ever come apart is if it falls crashing to the ground, and whether you glue this up with super glue or anything else, it will still fall apart. It has no makes no difference what kind of glue you used at that point. So wood glue with the paint is perfectly fine for this project. So just like that, this project is done. Didn't take a lot of time. In fact, you could use a lot of scraps to do this if you have a lot of scraps in your shop. Everything turned out great, and like I said before, using wood glue for this project is definitely durable. I ended up putting some wall mount hangers on here and hammered them on, and nothing came off this thing. Nothing fell, no problems at all. So I really hope this inspired you to create something like this. I hope that you find a pattern that you really like and that you can create on your own with minimal tools as possible. If you like this video and this episode, please give me a thumbs up and leave a comment below. Also, if you like this shirt, head down in the description below and follow the link and you can get yourself one of these really cool shirts. They're awesome, I love it, and I hope to see you in the next episode of B&O Craftsman DIY.